Johnson in the studio, or not in studio, in the on deck circle, waiting to come on the show. Coach, welcome back to the show. As always, we appreciate your time on this Wednesday. We know you're obviously busy and preparing for a big weekend against Tennessee. Before we get into the baseball conversation, I want to wish a happy belated birthday to you. I apologize for not texting you on Sunday. Lloyd got on me for that, so that I wasn't a good friend. So happy late belated birthday. How does it feel to be the youngest head coach in college baseball?
Yeah, that's not true anymore.
I thought I'd just stay still.
There was a time where that was close to true. I don't know if it was actually ever true, but it was close, and we're well past those days.
Well, Coach, you still look young. You're still vibrant. You're still ready to go. You haven't lost the energy. I want to talk about last night just a little bit. And before I really get into the question last night, Lloyd and I were talking off air, and he was asking questions about, what do you think about last night? And it's the first midweek game you've lost in 2 years. Y'all went undefeated last year. Y'all lost this year. Sometimes baseball happens. You and I have spoken on this show about Nick Saban's quote that he had on College Game Day, and basically saying you don't learn – the worst thing for your guys is to play bad and to win. The best thing for them to do is play bad and actually lose. You learn more lessons from that. Don't waste a failure. Is that something that you were kind of utilizing and trying to talk to your guys? Obviously, they didn't go out there hoping to lose the game. It just kind of happened that way. Everything that went wrong, could go wrong, went wrong.
Murphy's Law.
It's just kind of one of those things. Is that the message? Is that you saying, hey, listen, it's okay. It's not okay to lose, but obviously you lose. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from this. And let's move on and get ready for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tough game in all phases last night. Coaching, pitching, defense, offense. There just wasn't a whole lot of positive from it. So after the game, I decided to really not say much of anything.
Right.
And today was an off day, just how the calendar fell with Thursday, Friday, Saturday last week. And then back to Friday this week. So I did see a lot of guys here, working on their own. It's good. Weight training, in the cages, a couple guys throwing bullpens, that type of thing. So, really, if there's not something that's going to be productive, like there's no point in, really addressing it at that time. We'll circle back tomorrow at practice to make sure, you leave the moment of last night alone, but we learn a couple lessons from it and then move forward. And I've talked about this a lot, when you play so many games in a condensed amount of time, like you have to master the art of moving on. I have a lot of pride in our performance and how we operate, and, it wasn't our best game, but, I don't have a choice either to move on, and my choices have to positively impact the players. And it was a good day, around here in terms of what we need to do to move in a direction to be, the team that I believe we're capable of being. And I'm really looking forward to this weekend. Yeah. I'm really, really looking forward to this weekend.
Well, as my mama told me, if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't say nothing at all, which it feels like that was probably the message to the LSU baseball team. And I know you probably fired off a couple of texts. But with that said, if there's anything to learn from it, it's to move on and move past it. And it feels like in your profession and what you've done, it's not something that's happened often, but how much do you think that going forward that you can learn from this with an LSU baseball series against Tennessee, and how much that has an impact on what y'all are doing going forward?
Well, the success to me in regards to what you just asked is like that Tuesday night's game has absolutely nothing to do with the weekend, because it should. And that's sometimes hard for people to understand. But I think, if there's a lesson to be learned is when you're struggling, your ability, to just compartmentalize failure in one moment and leave it in the moment, you can learn from it. But you really make the game hard when you start dragging that with you to the next opportunity. And we have some players that need to do a better job of that, of leaving a failed, game or appearance or at bat right where it is, and then get back to recommitting to their plan and executing their plan that makes them successful and really good players. The game is hard as it is, number one. There's a lot of failure. Number two, we're playing the best competition. And then number three, if you get caught in the past as opposed to in the present moment and competing, you're making it almost impossible to be successful. And we have to get through that hump. And I think, there's a certain blessing and a curse to starting off as good as we did. And when I say starting off, I'm talking 34 games of really hard to pick at anything. I don't think our players got complacent. I think maybe you kind of get in that deal where things are easy when they're not. Like, they earned all the success that they had. And then you kind of crawl back into maybe reality a little bit, especially as life in the SEC. Then there's a little bit of like a ice cold bucket of water in your face.
Right.
And then you got to respond in a mature fashion and make no bones about it. We're going through a little bit of that right now. And it might turn out to be a blessing. What I do know is, like I said, anything that's happened to this point, positive or negative, can have nothing to do with what happens going forward. And we'll need to be that way because, we have good, all that's on our schedule has been for the last month and a half is really good teams.
Yeah. Coach, let's move on to Tennessee game. The Tennessee series this weekend. Obviously, you talked about how excited you are for that series. We had Jake Brown on earlier this week, and we were talking about how, obviously the offense hasn't played. They're going through this stretch where they're not, hitting on all cylinders, which is part of the season and part of like the ups and downs of the season. But he had mentioned that sometimes when you play a team and you have this anticipation of this really fun competitive series, sometimes those series or those games raise the level of competition because it has to. You're playing a team that wants to come in here and beat you, and sometimes by doing that kind of pushes them forward and puts them back on track of where they needed to go. I know you said you're excited about that weekend. Do you feel that the guys are just as excited? And do you feel like this is something that, they're obviously going to have to raise their level of play, but do you think that the raise in competition is going to help them jumpstart that?
Well, again, I'm dealing from a coach's perspective,
right?
And it certainly didn't look like it in terms of how we all performed. And
right.
I say we all, like myself included, performed in the game last night. That we approached last night's game as a playoff game, but we legitimately try to do that.
Yeah.
I think if you're a winner,
yep.
There's two elements of it. You have the ability to just block out everything, the external, even the opponent, and just focus on what you need to do your job. And I believe that to my very core. With that being said, there's always a human element to it. And, it's the last two national champions, number one and number two in the country in wins, from the time that I've arrived at LSU.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome. I respect those guys, and I believe that they respect us. We've played 10 times since I've been here, twice in Omaha, once in the SEC championship game, and they've been good games. They've been really good games across the board. And so I hope that fuels our players to bring the best out in them. I do think there's an element of that with the best competitors, that's what happens. And if that can, advance our team, I'm all for it.
Yep.
And I certainly hope that's the case.
Yeah, the series y'all had against them at home in 2023 was one of my favorite series of your time here so far. It was electric. There's big moments throughout the course of that weekend, and so that's kind of similar to what I'm hoping or we're going to see this weekend. Tennessee, obviously, a really good team. They've been good for the last few years. And I know you're kind of going through your scouting right now of them. What challenges and what do they do really well that's going to be a challenge for you? Obviously, they have a really good Friday night guy, and they have some pretty good guys in the middle of their lineup. What are some of the challenges that they pose to you that you're going to have to try to combat throughout the course of this weekend?
Yeah, I think they have explosive talent is what I would say. And what I mean by that is, Liam Doyle, you mentioned the Friday starter. He's good.
Yeah.
And he's better this year and left-handed and up to 98 miles an hour. And highly competitive, and we saw him last year at Ole Miss. He appears to be improved, to me this year, and that usually happens with the best players in college baseball. They get better year to year, and I'd certainly put him in that category. They have other big arms on the mound. I think from a pitching standpoint, what I would say about them, and this has been a theme since I've been here, is they do what they do well, very well.
Yeah.
They're great at what they are good at from the mound, and that's guy to guy. So having a good plan, against each guy, and there's several hard throwing pitchers that throw strikes and do what they do well. I think on offense, it's a team that has explosive power, some old players, very physical in nature. That keeping the ball in the park is going to be key, and limiting free bases is going to be key. And when we were playing our best, we were doing both of those things really, really well. So I just see talented players and very explosive on both sides of the ball, and that's kind of how they win.
Coach, the pitching rotation, you made a change in it last week. Is that, I know we've talked a lot about some of the decisions, and it's all a game-to-game, matchup-to-matchup. Your Friday night, Saturday night guys have been really good throughout the course of this year. Chase Shores has as much talent as anybody in the country, and he's still trying to find his legs and trying to get in rhythm. You went with an opener in Connor Ware last weekend on Sunday. Is that something that it's just dependent upon the matchup, or is that something maybe you're looking more into in the future?
We have a couple games before we get to Sunday, and I know that sounds a little bit lame, for lack of a better word. But if you pay attention, it is game by game for us, especially the point of the season that we're at. The quality opponents that we're playing. It's kind of like all hands on deck every game. Yeah, and I'm very comfortable coaching that way. And that's how we're going to do it, at least for the time being. And doesn't mean to say that we couldn't go back to Chase this weekend. We could. Doesn't mean that we couldn't, use Connor in a similar spot. We absolutely could. But right now, I'm not really deep enough to say, this is what I think is going to happen. And I want to give our team, the best chance to win every game as it comes, not just this weekend, but for the rest of my breathing life, So.
Hey, 326 hitter whenever you were in college, Coach. I found this out over the weekend. But aside from that, obviously there's been a lot made of the continuity of this team, and it feels like after a little bit of a whatever you want to call it, a bit of a rough patch, one hiccup. How much do you believe in the continuity of this team? You've seen it in 2023, you had it in 2024, and now moving on to this year. How close do you think that how much do you think that brings the team together whenever they have the continuity that they have and the players that you have on the squad that you've kind of put together? You saw the team versus me shirts that came out because we just subscribed to LSU Plus, so I got to see all the videos.
Yeah, I think it always remains to be seen. And I think that's the great thing about competitive athletics is, and especially baseball, and right now baseball in the SEC, man, you're going to get exposed. We're one of the best teams in the country, and we've lost 6 conference games. Right. Our opponent this weekend, easily one of the best teams in the country, they've lost 6 conference games. I think there's only one team that hasn't lost a series yet, through 6 weekends. So that means 15 teams have had a losing weekend at some point. I think we've had 2. Texas and Auburn. So it is what it is in terms of you have to have the mettle, so to speak, to take a punch, to face adversity, face failure, and not let that disrupt you from what you need to do to win.
Right.
And sometimes, when things go so good for so long, it's maybe taking a little longer than I would like, but if we can work past that and use it to our benefit and be back to playing the caliber of baseball that this team, I believe, is capable of playing, this can actually turn into a positive. Okay. And, I've said this before, my goal for the year is to take any difficulty, frustrate or failure or frustration or whatever, and somehow turn it into a positive, and we got some guys that I need to do a good job to help them do that. And thus you play better, and then you get a little bit of that momentum going, and then we're back in tune and in rhythm. Yeah. So it's a lot of personal decisions of toughness from, our staff and our players that need to make to be successful, because it will not be handed to us in any way, shape, or form.
Well, yeah, it feels like people have already forgotten that you've won the Alabama series at home. Like, that it's a far cry. It wasn't that long ago.
Well, I forgot that we did when we lost on Saturday night. So yeah, I can relate to that. Yep. And definitely understand. I do think the nature of baseball is different, but I'm not going to sit here and try to explain that, to anybody else. And I know it sounds really crazy, but like, I never validate myself or our program on really even winning or losing or our record. I validate it on how we play and how we conduct our business. I really believe if you do that in a high caliber fashion, the results will follow. And obviously we know what the bottom line is, but that's a tricky deal. And, like I said, we didn't play good last night. And, I was definitely a part of that. And I have to, help our players get into a better frame of mind to be successful. And I'm not going to just pass that off to them. And, our staff is well positioned for this. We have a lot of experience, and, we have players that, really care about being good. And it's our job to help them do that. And then, if we've prepared well, they have to have the competitive toughness to take a good plan into the game and have the toughness to execute it regardless on what's going on around them. Yep. And, baseball, as you guys know, that really challenges you maybe than any other sport, because the degree of difficulty to be successful is high anyways. Correct. And then if you get here with, frustration, failure, and get outside of what you need to do, darn near impossible. Yeah. And like I said, we got some guys that need to get past that right now.
Coach, you don't have to explain the nature of baseball. We do that for you. So we explain it. When you get off the air, I'm going to explain the nature of how baseball works and how the season works and how it's not comparable to really any other sport. So you don't worry about that. We got you covered on that. I do want to mention, it's kind of it's got to make you uneasy that Lloyd researched you over the weekend and knows all the stuff about you. I mean, he threw the 326 out at me, and I was like, man, how did you know? He goes, I Googled him this weekend. I was like, that's kind of weird. Why would you do that?
I didn't know that much about him. I knew Arizona, and then I knew Nevada, and then I was like, well, let me go back and see. Coach, you used to have rock the old goatee also.
What's funny about that is one of our players pulled up a picture of that, and I was like, man, how did you even get that? And they were asking me if I would bring that back if we won another national championship. Mustache. And I was like, man, you guys are setting the bar low, because that's all I think about on a daily basis. So, but yeah, the goatee probably won't be seen for a while.
Mustache. We had Jake Brown on, who also was conjecture about that he may dye his mustache. So I'm saying I was trying to get you on the train to join the team, Coach.
Yeah, Jake Brown's mustache is probably one mustache too many.
That's the consensus amongst the team guys in the dugout, in the locker room. That's what we figured out. Coach, we appreciate you. I know tonight's a long night for you and getting ready for this weekend. Good luck this weekend. We're looking forward to watching you go out there and play some good baseball. And
you call your own number, Coach. Put 2 in.
And we're looking forward to it. Appreciate you.
I wish I could. Yeah, I wish I could.
Yeah.
Oh, Coach, real quick, don't take away the ping pong table. The boys are playing over there. That's how you breed competition.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we talked about this. We actually had a ping pong tournament last Monday.
Oh, who won?
As part of practice, Derek Curiel.
Yeah, that's what they say. He's good. He's good, they said.
It's my understanding he's far superior to everybody else. But my mind was we literally just needed to move past Auburn. And, that's a very similar deal. So hopefully we can draw from that experience. I don't know that we necessarily played our best against Alabama, but we did play well enough to, beat an RPI top 10 team 2 out of 3. And, So this team's capable of getting rolling in the right direction, and need to get in the box like you get in the ping pong table.
That's
and
it.
Just get after it. And
Compete.
go for it. And that was kind of the message of that. So hopefully we can tap back into that this weekend.
Did you
I
get
love
on
it.
the table?
What's that?
Did you get on the table?
I only heard table.
Oh, did you? No, but I asked, did you play? Did you play a part? Did you have a role? Did you put yourself in the tournament?
I set the bracket up.
See, there
okay,
you go.
There you go. There you go.
Strategic matchups.
He and Wanaka were teammates.
Yeah, strategic matchups. I like that. Coach, we appreciate you as always. Thanks for taking the time to come on our show. Good luck this weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week after a series win.
After a sweep.
All right, guys.
All right, later.
Have a great night.
You too.
You too.